Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. We are thrilled to be honoring 3 of our Presidential Award winners for excellence in math and science teaching through the New Jersey STEM Pathways Network webinar today. My name is Erica DiMichele, and I am one of the co-STEM coordinators for the Delran STEM Ecosystem Alliance, one of 5 ecosystems here in the state of New Jersey. I'm joined by my colleague, Mary Jo Hutchinson, as well as Shirley Guzman of the New Jersey STEM Pathways Network in honoring our recipients today. Let's go to the next slide. So what is PAEMST? This is the short way for saying that very long title of the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. This is the highest recognition that a kindergarten through 12th grade science, technology, engineering, or math science teacher may receive for outstanding teaching in the United States. And 3 of our 4 winners are going to be on our webinar today: Siobhan McVeigh, Michael Dunley, and Ralph Pantozzi. We have another winner, Patricia Lee from Lumberton, who was unable to make it on the call today. We will be going through 5 questions, and each of our winners will talk for about 3 minutes about how they got into the teaching pipeline, what was their story from when they first started to where they are today, their takeaways from the PAEMST award process and what their lesson submission looked like, how aspiring teachers interested in a STEM route can find that professional pathway, who's successful whether or not you're an alternate route or not, how school boards can support STEM learning and how they've been supported in their own careers, and then in their classrooms, what success has looked like and how is STEM teaching integrated into the classroom. At the end, we will do a question answer based session, but you must put those questions into the chat box as we proceed. So please feel free to do so. If need be, and there's a question that Shirley, who is moderating the chat box, sees, then she can stop us at any time. Otherwise, we can hold those questions till the end. Finally, you'll have some social media connections for the 3 winners so that you can stay in touch and see what it is that they're doing in the classroom, because having looked at their feeds, especially on Twitter, they've got a lot going on and a lot to share, both from their own classrooms, but also from other people that they're following. Okay, Shirley, why don't you go ahead? Okay, so we explained what PAEMST is. A lot of people have never heard of this award, which is unfortunate because to be considered for it, it truly is the highest award that a teacher can win. And we all know that math and science teaching is particularly a difficult content area for students to grasp and for our students to move into. But we are thrilled that, you know, of a maximum of 108 teachers that are able to be recognized each year, in 2017, the secondary teachers, Ralph and Siobhan, were given the award in math and science teaching. It doesn't mean that because you're nominated that you actually are accepted as a winner. So they both were in 2017. And then our elementary winners from 2018 were Michael and Patricia, Michael for math and Patricia for science. Presidential awardees will receive a certificate signed by the president, a trip to Washington, D.C. to attend a series of recognition events, and professional development opportunities, which sound like they were pretty fantastic. There's a $10,000 award given from the National Science Foundation, and awardees become an active network of outstanding educators from throughout the nation. This award's been given since 1983, and more than 5,000 teachers have been recognized for their contributions in the classroom and in our profession. And awardees reflect the expertise and dedication of our nation's teaching corps and demonstrate a positive impact of excellent teachers on student achievement. Today's panelists went through quite a process. First, they had to be nominated. Then the application, which included videotape teaching, acquiring student permissions, of course, multiple essays and bureaucratic paperwork. Administration was informed of their wins in the fall of their winning year. Actually, Ralph and Siobhan won for 2017, and we weren't informed till 2019. So she's been very patient. And so have you, Michael and Ralph. So as we proceed through, you're going to be introduced to the 3 PAEMST winners and see their picture. You'll hear their voice, and they'll just tell you a brief bit about themselves, and then we'll move on to the questions addressed in the agenda. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Mike Dunley, and this is my 17th year teaching. I'm a national board certified teacher, early childhood generalist. I currently teach 3rd grade in Tabernacle Elementary. And as you've already heard, I was the 2018 Presidential Award winner for math, K-6. I actually was a finalist in 2016, was not selected, and had to resubmit for 2018. So embodying the growth mindset and showing that math is never a once and done, I actually had to go through twice. And I will now introduce you all to Siobhan McVeigh, and she'll go ahead and introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Siobhan, and I am the 2017 awardee for science for secondary 7 through 12. And currently I'm teaching at Delran High School. This is my 19th year, I think, almost 19th year of teaching. A couple of those years were middle school science, but then I've been high school chemistry and physical science ever since. And so I'm excited to be here and share some of my story with you. I think Ralph Pantozzi is up next. I think we want one slide too many. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ralph Pantozzi. I've been teaching in New Jersey schools, one place or another, for 28 years. This is my 28th year right now. And I've been the math department chair at the Kent Place School in Summit, New Jersey for the last 9 years. And I'm excited to be talking to you all today. I'll turn it back over to Michael for the first question.
So we were all asked in preparation for this webinar, how did we get into the teaching pipeline? I am an early elementary male educator, which you don't often find many of. When I taught 2nd grade, I think I was 4% of the workforce. I didn't become a teacher until I was 35. I utilized the alternate route program in New Jersey, the new pathways to teaching. And it really happened because I was chaperoning my oldest daughter, Quinn, who you can tell we're quite Irish. So Quinn's class trip was to the beach, and I was a chaperone, and the other teacher, her teacher, said, have you ever considered becoming a teacher? And so in 2003, I began by teaching preschool, getting certified, and I've taught 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades. Most of my entire education employment has been working with inclusion classrooms. So I've been the general education teacher in a special education classroom. I'm working on my 2nd master's degree right now in teacher leadership. I was a Teacher of the Year finalist in 2012. And I spent a large portion of my career in Stafford Township, and I'm in my 3rd year now in Tabernacle. So it took becoming a father before I discovered the joy of working with children. And I use the alternate route, which is typically associated with your high school, middle school science and math teachers, but I was able to use it to get into the elementary. And now I'll hand it off to Siobhan.
So I graduated high school fully intending on becoming an equine veterinarian and traveled to Michigan State to pursue my undergraduate in animal science, and ultimately wanted to go to vet school. And it wasn't until college that I actually discovered that I loved chemistry. I worked in some research labs as an undergraduate student. I was fortunate to be able to work in a nutrition lab, a ruminant nutrition lab, where I met some pretty fabulous and super smart grad students, and I thought, this is maybe what I want to do. I might want to go into research rather than vet school. And so I stayed and graduated with my animal science degree from Michigan State in 1994, and considered going into grad school. But because I had taken so many chemistry classes and really started to love the subject, I decided instead to stay and get my teaching certification. So I graduated with my undergraduate degree in 1994, but then stayed and full-time pursued all of the education requirements so that way I could get my teaching certification in ultimately in chemistry and biology from Michigan State. So it took me just one extra year to do that. But so I'm definitely a traditional route teacher. What was great about Michigan State's program is we had a full year of a teaching internship prior to actually receiving our certification. So I'll talk more about that in a little bit later. But after that, I moved to Chicago and taught middle school science for 2 years at a small school on the south side of Chicago. And after 2 years of that, decided to move back home to New Jersey because I grew up in New Jersey and I wanted to be closer to family. And I taught at Rahway High School, and that's where I moved to the teaching high school full-time. I taught chemistry, AP chemistry, and physical science in Rahway for 4 years before I took 1 year break from the classroom in order to pursue my master's at the University of Pennsylvania. While I was at Rahway, I got involved with the Merck Institute for Science Education, which was a professional development organization under the Merck umbrella. They provided professional development opportunities for, at that time, K through 8th grade teachers. And since then, they expanded the program to work with high school teachers as well. And so I got to work as a content area expert, working with elementary and middle school teachers as they implemented the professional development opportunities in the summer, teaching the pedagogy, and I was the content person with my science background for any of the units that involved heavy chemistry focus. And that's where I really started to develop my, I guess, my methods for better classroom management, learning from my elementary school teacher peers, and also more inquiry design into the high school classroom, kind of stemming off of all the cool things that I was seeing happening in the lower grades and more integrated approach to science. So then I moved to Philadelphia to get my master's at University of Pennsylvania and kept my connections with the Merck Institute. So even though we were living in Philadelphia, I still worked with the Merck Institute while I worked on my master's, and then ultimately started teaching at Sterling High School for 6 years, and then moved to Delran High School. And I'm at Delran High School now, currently teaching AP chemistry. I've taught also the honors and the college prep chemistry. And this year, starting last year, we implemented a new course called physical science, which is a blend of chemistry and physics. And I taught that last year and currently teach it as well. And so this year it's all AP chemistry and physical science. And I'll turn it over to Ralph.
So my story, I did the traditional teaching preparation pipeline at Rutgers University, got my math degree, and then took education as a minor. The whole story of how I got to where I am today, however, is really about taking every opportunity and having opportunities come my way to really watch other people teach and to learn from other teachers. So as a new teacher, I got involved immediately in the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and the Association of Math Teachers of New Jersey. And in my graduate program, which I started at Rutgers right after I got my BA, the program was focused on observing teachers and observing students do math through the high technology of the time, which was videotape, VHS cassettes. So I learned a lot, and I'm continuing to learn a lot from watching myself teach, meaning now take my iPhone out and observe it, watch it later. And when I had a visitor come, I was nominated for this award, the Princeton University Prize for Distinguished Teaching. The person who, they sent out a team from the university at Princeton to watch you for a whole day. So I had someone watch my lessons all day and just about everything I did that whole day. And the thing that she noticed was that, well, she said, I'd never watched a math teacher change the course of a lesson based on students' questions. And I hadn't really thought that was something that was so prominent in what I did, but having watched videotapes, I realized, yeah, that was pretty important. And I'll talk more about that in some of the later slides. But I've been in a number of different school districts, searching for just the right fit for myself and my family in terms of location and the kind of school that it was and what they were supporting in terms of math education. So another slide later talks about how school boards can support, so I'll come back to that point. Well, my most recent fun and learning has come from doing things with the National Museum of Mathematics in New York City. They are looking to spread the love of math everywhere from their actual museum with hands-on exhibits. So I've tried in recent years to continue to look at how I teach and learn from the best all around. And that's why I'm here today and where I hope to go next. So I'll turn it back to Michael.
Thank you, Ralph. So we were asked about our takeaways from the award process and the lesson submission. I think what's really interesting about this particular webinar is the fact that we're able to truly represent the full spectrum from early elementary all the way up to high school. Because one of the big things that I found as a takeaway is that as a third grade teacher, second grade teacher, first grade teacher, we are not typically identified as science teachers or math teachers. And we tend to spend most of the elementary schools are set up in such a way where you're working with the same group of students for 5.5 hours a day for 180 days. That's 900 hours a year. So it's an amazing impact and offers great opportunities for you to do a lot of cross-content, multidisciplinary teaching, which is another big takeaway from this. So in my perspective as an early elementary teacher, this award really helped me advance the idea and the concept, just the fact that we are in fact math teachers, as relevant and as mathematical as any other at any other grade level. And the same goes for the science component. Also, what's really been alarming, and I'm sure my fellow colleagues on the call would agree, that we've seen a real spike in anxiety among students in general. And in a subject like math, it's often been a real barrier to learning. And so being able to be a part of this award process has been able for me to advance the agenda of trying to create environments where students have and experience less anxiety and stress while working with math. And in so doing, making it more of an enjoyable, interactive process. Today, I was teaching a fractions lesson, and I was using clementines and apples and a corer to create the slices and to make it edible, involving multiple senses, and to really show them that math is not in a textbook. It's completely around them. It's in the natural world. It's in the man-made world, and making it more of an experience as opposed to something that's quite dry or not something that's exciting or engaging. So the takeaways really have been that you can find math all around you, that it should be something that's a source of great enjoyment, turning students personal, the way that they see themselves as math learners way too often. I mean, I've taught second grade for 14 years or 12 years, and what was so common was for kids to say, I'm bad at math. At 7 years old, to identify yourself in that way is something you have to turn around before you can really open them up to the learning that needs to happen and can happen. So the award process is something that really enabled me to try to change some of the stigma and to change the attitudes and to help share with other educators as I've been able to present and share some of my lesson strategies with other educators to try to change that type of trend in math. And I'll now hand it off to Siobhan.
Thank you, Michael. I guess the award process for me, I mean, for all of us, it's quite a long process. So I would say to begin with, it was just truly an honor to be nominated by someone, to recognizes what you're doing in the classroom as being outstanding, even though I mean, for myself at least, I never really thought of what I was doing in the classroom was outstanding, other than just, doing my job and doing my job as best as I thought I could. like every day. And so I was nominated by a colleague from the Merck Institute. And so that was truly flattering. And at first glance, I had thought, you know, there's no way what I have to say in an application process would, you know, stand out among some of the other amazing teachers that I've seen. But apparently it did. And so what I found is that when I was preparing my lesson, we had to videotape a lesson and then reflect on it. And it was one of the most profound professional development experiences I've had in quite a while, because it actually required me to take a deep look at what I was doing in one tiny part of my class and then see how that fit into the overall curriculum as a whole for the year for those kids, and also, you know, how it connected from the beginning of the unit through the middle to the end. So you'll see on the slide, the bottom right-hand corner was one of the pieces of student work that I uploaded into my application, and that's was created by students during my lesson that I had videotaped. And it was a lesson on periodic trends, and it was an honors chemistry class, and students were collaborating to make sense of the trends on the periodic table and how those directly related back to the structure of the atom. And so I had to think about their misconceptions, and I had to change within the lesson to address some of those and steer their conversations so that way they would ultimately gain an understanding or construct an understanding for themselves about how the structure of the atom leads to these trends, which was, it's a great opportunity within the classroom to do some collaborative learning. And I would say probably my takeaway from the application process from just studying this lesson that I had to submit was, you know, how do I now create opportunities like that for all of my students? So I don't want to say it's easy to do that in an honors chemistry classroom, because it's not. It takes a lot of work to plan and structure things so that it goes smoothly and students have this opportunity to engage in the science practices with each other. But for the past couple of years, I haven't been teaching honors chemistry. I've been teaching physical science, which is our general level course. Instead of chemistry, it's a blend of the chemistry and physics together for students who would not otherwise take physics as seniors. And so it's really caused me to reevaluate, like, how can I structure things in that class to get students to have similar opportunities? I find that my students in physical science are very good at doing school and appearing to be busy and on task, and they're very used to taking notes from PowerPoint slides and completing fill in the blank note sheets. And that's not at all how we run the physical science class. It's a co-taught class between myself and a special education teacher, and we want it to be very hands-on, but many of our students have not been experiencing that kind of science in their first 2 years of high school. And so we're really trying to reflect on our experiences and build in more opportunities for student engagement with the practices and in collaborative dialogue with each other. And so I think that is my big takeaway from this whole process is, how do I leverage those high quality opportunities for students at all levels in all of our classes, and how can we work together as a department to achieve that? And so it's a lot of work, and so it doesn't always get embraced with full enthusiasm from everyone, but, you know, how can we make steps towards that? And I think I'll send it over to Ralph now.
Hi. My thinking about my takeaways from this award process echoes what I said in my first slide. You may be familiar with the process of lesson study, where groups of teachers will get together and examine a lesson. Well, no, first start by planning and saying, you know, what's the math of this lesson going to be? Why is it important? Anticipating how students might think about it, what connections they might make within the subject and to other STEM fields and beyond. How will they remember this content in the future? And really thinking about what makes an effective lesson overall. And that's something I had the opportunity to participate in different districts. And the effect on student learning when teachers get together and plan things and this isn't just about handing in a lesson plan because an administrator comes along and needs to stamp it for a report. This is really thinking about how can we adapt our teaching to the students in front of us each year and refine lessons over the course of different years. When a department works together and there's collaboration, you can really make a big impact on a whole lot of students. And so the award process, you're submitting a lesson, you're submitting the videotape, as my colleagues have said. I want to add that it doesn't have to be the most exciting lesson. If you look at the questions that you write about, it's really bread and butter items about good teaching and looking to see that you've implemented them in a way that impacts student learning. Certainly part of that is adjusting to students mid-lesson and studying the video. One of the best things I got out of going through the process for this particular award was the lessons that I didn't send in, the lessons that came after this lesson. I did what I did for the lesson and I said, this is my plan, but then what happened in those days afterwards is part of what you report for the award process as part of your portfolio that you send in. And really trying to look at my lessons as if I were in the shoes of the student. How does this appear to me? Is this a clear lesson to me? Does it engage me? And so that's one of the best ways you can evaluate whether a lesson was good for your students, is whether they remember it later. And our reflection on it as teachers helps make the next lesson better the next day as well. So overall, I applied for this. Well, I almost applied for the award some previous years, but I chickened out and didn't apply. Someone nominated me then, and I didn't. I self-nominated myself the next time, and I convinced myself, or I think I needed to convince myself, that it wasn't about doing some amazing lesson that would be on the nightly news. It was just about student learning. I will hand it now back to Michael for the next question.
It's interesting, Ralph, that you said something at the end of yours where you were talking about how the student's point of view, right? And that brings in this whole empathy thing, because with this question, how should aspiring teachers interested in STEM or STEAM proceed with their professional pathway? My initial take at that is the idea that we have to reinvent how science and math is taught in a way that it needs to become much more rooted in the interdisciplinary or cross-content type methods. I feel I have an advantage working with the students, the same group of students, for the entire day, all year, to really jump at these. And some of the things that I've done have been some of the global projects that my classroom has been engaged with, and finding that authenticity that you can apply with math and with science, and also starting with that point of view of empathy about what problems can we solve for someone, how can we improve other people's lives using math and science. We're at a time right now of such critical importance where science is often questioned, challenged in the media and by the masses. We also have math as a major part of science, that we really have to create a much more literate science and mathematical society in order to proceed with the challenges that we are currently faced with our climate and other things going on. So I think as encouraging the influx of new professionals into this pathway to really change how we view science, and how it's not going to be a science lesson. It could be an entirely different lesson that has science as a part of it. And that would be the big message that I would want, is to stop siloing the subjects and really finding where in our world can we solve the critical problems and apply science and math. And I think that would open up the doors to so many people to come back in and find the joy of teaching. There's so many people out there. I mean, the one thing that hasn't really come up yet is the joy that you can have while teaching math and science. And I know math in particular has a real particularly bad rap. I think Ralph would back me on that. A lot of people are immediately coming with some bias towards math. And so that would be what I would definitely want to share, is that we can have an important hand in changing that perspective And I'll hand it off now to Siobhan for the science.
So while not on my slide, I think those are excellent points, Michael. Like I think there are many times I talk with my supervisor and my colleagues about, how in high school in my science class, I only have 41 minutes with my students on any given day and during any given period. And to think that we just start a project and we start this, type of trying to solve a problem or investigate a phenomena, and then the bell rings and we're trying to build in the connection between math, or I'm trying to have them work on writing their conclusion paragraphs using claims, evidence, and reasoning. And I think, wouldn't it be great if I could then move with these same group of students to their English class and we could work on editing there? Or what if they came to me and stayed with me and the math teacher together while we developed a mathematical model for our heat transfer investigation, those kinds of things. So I would love to be able to rethink the schedule and to, do a more integrated or interdisciplinary approach to science, and so that we could really, so students could see the connections and they wouldn't feel like when they leave science, they're done thinking about science. They would, or when they come to science, they can put math on hold or something like that. Like in order to see it all together, and it would just have so much more profound meaning. So I agree with you there. I guess when I put my slide together for this, I thought about, different pathways. And I think, Michael, on one of your earlier slides, you said something about you felt as an alternate route teacher, like sometimes some bias against you, or, like that this wasn't the traditional route. And so maybe, other teachers perhaps saw you differently than teachers who had come to teaching through the traditional route. And I would say that I'm guilty as charged for not I didn't know you when you first started teaching, but there are teachers that I've met who are alternate route at the high school, and I thought, like thinking that they might not be as well equipped for the classroom. And I would say that that's not necessarily true. I think it's all about how you approach your development as a teacher when you're in the classroom. And so I think for me, coming from the traditional route to teaching, what I felt was a benefit was at Michigan State, we had a full year of teaching internship. So I started with those students on the first day of school, and I worked with them right through final exams. So I got to work with a group of students and a collaborative teacher, and we had a pretty good relationship, myself and the collaborating teacher together, like shared responsibility in the classroom from day one through exams. And so I got to see all of that and to work toward developing what my practice would look like. And so for me, there was that time built for analysis of my own practice and also seeing other teachers teach. I had some flexibility to move and watch other teachers teach while I was doing my teaching internship. And also I had those, like what I said, ready-made colleagues, because we had class together with all of the other teachers who were doing student teaching at the same time. And so we really spent a lot of time working through some of our challenges together. And so that was a huge gift to me in terms of becoming a teacher, because I actually started to build those relationships, and some of those relationships that I still have today and have been really beneficial to me growing as a professional. I think that we need to do a better job, especially in the high school, recruiting from some of these programs to looking at, I don't think we're graduating in New Jersey a whole lot of physical science teachers, certified teachers every year, but I think we need to look at some of these schools of education who are graduating certified teachers, and to see where they're going and how we can recruit them. I don't think we as schools do a good job of recruiting candidates. It's kind of like we put the application process out there, our application posting out there, and whoever applies, that's what we get. We don't actively seek out candidates, which through either traditional route or alternate route, we can find some people who are really going to do what's best for our kids. And so I think also much of my continued success was directly related to my participation in the Merck Institute and that ongoing professional development, which I spoke about earlier. And so I know that the Merck Institute does not formally exist anymore, but there are other groups doing similar work. And so how can we create opportunities like that for teachers who are in service right now, and to have them continue to grow and to continue to see how we can develop while currently teaching in our classrooms, and so that we don't feel like we start to stagnate in our classrooms, and we feel like teaching is, like I feel every day, an exciting and new adventure every single day, to borrow from Ralph's Choose Your Own Adventure. I think people need to see that and feel that, and and feel supported, and then we'll be able to retain the quality teachers that we currently do have in our classrooms. And I'll move over to Ralph now.
Yeah, so I'll pick that up right there about the adventure. I think that when you think about, if you're an aspiring teacher interested in getting into a professional pathway, there's no one right way to do it. I've been a brand new teacher essentially at 7 different schools, and worked with teachers who had come from the alternate route, traditional routes, and all sorts of different places. The key seems to be finding a community and a supportive environment, because no teacher is an island. Teaching, like many other professions, involves continual learning. You don't sit still. You don't just get a degree and then you know how to do it for the rest of your career. So finding both a community within your school that's going to help you think about your own practice, and national and local communities of teachers who work together. You learn so much from talking to other teachers and gathering ideas and refining your own lessons. And like as I said, I'm in my 28th year of teaching, and I can still go into a lesson and go, that didn't go well. How did that happen? I've been teaching for so many years. Understanding that you always have more to learn is a key to being successful in this career. Finding out about the pathway, schools are always looking for jobs. They're always looking for people, particularly in the current decade that just started, who are going to be able to talk about diverse experiences in their lives, and ones who will, as I say on the slide here, question assumptions. Like, is this the way this should be done? And those who end up being successful, no matter what route they came from, are ones who are always questioning their assumptions, always asking, studying what they're doing, reflecting on it. But I want to come back to the idea that what makes a career in teaching is finding colleagues to work with and to be supportive friends of you, because teaching is tough sometimes. You come home and you're really tired and you're not sure you want to come back the next day with the same energy, because you don't know where you're going to find the energy, but you often find it in your colleagues. So as you look for different places to work, and you got to think of yourself and your students, because when you have a supportive environment around you, your students only benefit. Turning it back to Michael.
So we were asked in this following question about how the role of school boards in supporting STEM in our schools and in our curriculum. And I guess my quick response to this is that I've had experience in 2 separate districts with very different mindsets. And I think there's a better question is how school boards and administration work together, because they should be working together, and they often are the source by which one is giving information to the other. The experts would be more of the administration, and then getting the collaboration with the school board in order to find the resources to really support what should be defined as good learning. So I think when you have a sound understanding of what STEM is and what it should look like, that would be the first step. And then moving forward from then is allowing those experts that you've hired and put in place to make those decisions and put in place. And so much of it is not just the decision, but then the implementation. And I know that in several of the comments of Siobhan and Ralph, we've heard about training and professional development and learning and the support you can gain from colleagues. It's not a once and done type of idea, but in so many places, there's almost like a copycat type syndrome going on, where suddenly you have maker spaces popping up, or you have STEM labs or STEAM labs. And it's done because there is an understanding that this is important, but there's not a real deep grasp of what it should look like and how it should be implemented effectively. So I think it really relies on that relationship between multiple stakeholders. And I'll now hand it off to Siobhan.
I think where I'm currently working and in my past schools, largely my classroom has been my own, which is great in a lot of ways. There's very little outside control over what I do, and so I have a lot of autonomy within my classroom. And while it can be very positive because I can feel like I can do what I think is best for students and I can implement, there's a curriculum, but I can go about teaching it in the way that I have organized in my mind and how I think that is best for my students for the year. And that can feel very liberating and feel, you know, like I'm viewed as the expert in my field. And so that, you know, kind of like a pat on my back, like keep on doing what you're doing, usually feels nice. However, it doesn't challenge one to grow and to think about and reconsider, you know, is this really what is best for the students? And so maybe I'm doing it because this is how I've always taught, or maybe I'm doing it because this is what I've read about. But unless you have a strong community of teacher learners in your department, then it can be isolating, and it can also be a place where teachers start to veer off on different pathways and teaching the same curriculum in different ways, which sometimes can be good, but you know, often then builds confusion among students, especially when they're kids in the same grade in the same course, but learning things very differently. And so I think building cohesion within a department is very important, and not that the school board has a direct impact on that particularly. I think that's what we need as teachers sometimes from our administrators, is how do we work together to build a cohesive vision of what science education looks like for our students in this school using this curriculum and under the umbrella of the state standards. And so, and I think this ongoing focus on professional development so that teachers can grow and expand their repertoire, but that doesn't always have to be external professional development. It could be very much professional learning communities where there's a focus on specific goals driven by the teachers. So goals that teachers have identified as important for their students, and trusting us to be those experts in the fields to identify these goals and issues, but then also to work on them together and to seek out how we will continue to progress in terms of maybe we do pursue some outside professional development, or maybe we bring someone in, or maybe we just rely on the expertise in the building until we have a better understanding of what the problem is or what the ultimate method of determining our level of success on this particular goal will be. So again, it can feel very positive, like, you know, they trust me and that's great. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily set one up for continued expansion of their repertoire and their pedagogy. And so I don't know that it would come from the school board specifically, as this slide is supposed to be talking about the school board, but I feel supported in that people recognize my expertise, but I also would value more collegial contact and also a more cohesive vision within our department. And so with that, I'd like to hear Ralph's thoughts.
Yes, agreeing with much of that, and echoing what I've said in my previous slides, professional development for teachers on an ongoing basis throughout a teacher's career is essential for school boards to support, giving teachers time to collaborate together, to do some of the things that I've talked about before in my previous slides, planning lessons and aligning instruction between grade levels, giving teachers opportunities to take leadership roles without leaving the classroom, and fostering communication between different schools in a district even. And also, as Siobhan said, really echoing that, listening to teachers' own voice and their experience and saying, here's where the experts are, and these are people we should follow. I think the most important thing that school boards can do is recognize that change takes time, and to develop the best instruction for our students, it's often incremental. Schools sometimes will bring in a program and say, hey, we've got this new math program, or we're going to use this new software and everything will change overnight. That's never true. So I've moved from one district to another, as I said in my first or second slide, because I found that if a district moves to a position of looking for immediate results, it doesn't really benefit the students, and that's what it's all about. So when you're looking for a good place to be, to develop your own teaching career and the end goal of helping students, school boards play an important role in giving the educators the time and support to implement what we know. Those, again, it's not about exciting lessons necessarily, but just doing the bread and butter instructional strategies that we know to be effective for students. Back to Michael.
So we were asked in your classroom, what does success look like and is it integrated? So I just wanted to give a quick overlook here. I do a lot of science. I do both science and math. When you teach elementary, you have to choose which category you're going to submit for this award. You have that option since you do teach both. I chose math because as I have a passion for it, and as I've mentioned earlier, I'm trying to really change the attitude towards math. But all the learning is multidisciplinary, and I've really jumped into global learning. My class has been a part of a global climate action project that has involved over 500 schools in 120 countries, I think, this past year. We use a lot of technology, and we'll Skype with experts. We Skyped with Celine Cousteau, the granddaughter and documentarian of Jacques Cousteau. Richard Hyman, who was one of the frogmen on the Calypso with Cousteau, and Dr. Jennifer Languel, who's from, I think, Discovery Planet, and she was talking to our students about a self-sustaining city in Western Florida. And then we bring experts in, like Senator Troy Singleton from down here in South Jersey came to visit our class, and we were learning about the politics of climate change and what we could do as students and write our congressmen and women and demand change. And then also we brought in a local farmer from Russo's Farms, Mrs. Gazelle, who came in and talked about how climate change is really changing her career as a farmer for over 40 years, seeing those real changes in the local community. This type of learning is what really is going to bring home this relevance of science and math, and where you're comparing average rainfalls between Florida and New Jersey and asking those critical questions about why and why is it changing and why does more rain fall in the summer than other times of the year. Having them really work in collaborative teams, engage with cultures around the world and students around the world, because these problems are worldwide, they're not isolated. So the learning and what does success look like is when children are starting to look to one another to help solve problems and use science and math and language arts and communication skills, everything that they're going to have to do when they go out into the real world, and not isolate it into this is what they're going to learn for now. So that's what success looks like, and I'll hand it off to Siobhan in the high school.
Thank you. So I guess success in my classroom, it's similar, although we don't have as much integration between the subjects. Obviously, we're doing lots of math and also ELA in terms of writing conclusions and developing our arguments and communicating our ideas. So I guess my big goal for students, and when I feel like we've had a successful day, is when students are actively engaged in those science and engineering practices, and that's where it all comes together, where they're actually doing science. they're talking about science with each other and developing their own models. They're using their models to make predictions and testing them to see how they hold up in real world sciences. And so, you know, like those aha moments are great, but, you know, I love to see students explaining things to other kids, you know, like if somebody's been absent for a day or two and can walk into the classroom and turn to their partner and say, you know, what did I miss? And I can hear that student, that partner explain what we did the day before in their own words and truly make sense of the content and maybe reach out to another person if they're unsure of something. That's success to me. They're working together to figure out the content and they're doing the intellectual heavy lifting for themselves. And so I love to see the kids talk about science outside of the walls of the classroom. So when we're doing a project in class and it doesn't just connect with one class period, like multiple class periods from multiple teachers are all doing the same project, and I can walk down to the cafeteria and I hear students talking about it. Well, that's not what we did today. This is what we did. And they explain what they did, and then they realize like, hey, they're all learning the same thing, but in slightly different ways, or they're coming to different conclusions, and then they're discussing them at lunch or waiting in the bus lane to be picked up. And they're actually using what they know and feeling like they can figure out answers on their own. And to me, that's a success. When they bring their own ideas and observations into the classroom, again, another success. When they're using their skills that they've learned in other classes, or they're saying, wait, you know, reciprocal, you know, we just learned about that in math, and now you're telling me that that is, you know, comes into play here in science as well. And they're seeing those connections, and they're actually using what they've learned in other coursework to actually solve a problem that's been presented to them in science. Huge success. And so those are the things that I'm looking for students to work collaboratively and to feel empowered that they can use science, not just within the classroom, but it's then something that I know they'll carry with them when they go out about their everyday life or into the world, and they feel like, I've figured out problems in chemistry or physical science. So now if I encounter another problem, I have the skills to research it and talk about it with someone else, a colleague, a friend, a peer, to determine a solution. And I feel confidence in myself and my ability to problem solve. And so to me, that's what we're looking for. Yes, I want them to learn the chemistry content or the physics content, but I want them to develop the confidence in themselves to be able to figure out problems when they leave me. And with that, let's hear from Ralph.
Well, Siobhan pretty much said everything that was in my notes here, so I'll be really brief. Pretty much everything that Siobhan said with respect to science, I would say with respect to math. So, you know, really in summary, as Siobhan said, the biggest skills students can have is the habit of asking questions and not stopping cold when faced with something different and saying, oh, I need someone to tell me what to do now. In math in particular, when the students who are most successful are the ones who are taking in their skills from other classes and not thinking there's some fine dividing line between even the English or history and what they do in math class and the way they might talk to each other and ask each other questions. And as Siobhan said, talk to each other in the cafeteria, compare ideas. Those kinds of skills are the most important across subjects, and particularly in math. If they're going to use it in a place, well, they're often going to use it in a place that doesn't look quite like the place that they learned it or quite the context that they learned it in. So I think to conclude, I've not ever taught any grade younger than 6th grade, but when I see students in grades K through 12 leaving the class with some answers and more questions, and they're taking those questions home and to their science class and to their technology class and even into their history and English classes, that's what success looks like.
Okay, so let's go on to the last slide, Shirley, and This is how you're going to be able to follow our speakers today. We would like now time to do some question and answer. So Shirley, why don't you go ahead and let us know what was in the chat box during this incredible presentation by Michael, Siobhan, and Ralph.
Okay, so Kim Case said, it sounds like a recreation of MISE, M-I-S-E, programming. Could be something for NJSPN to consider.
So that would be, it would be great. I mean, the MISE program was extensive, and many of the people who worked with MISE are now doing professional development in other capacities around the state of New Jersey. And so there are definitely people that can be contacted in terms of figuring out resources or to see how their programming could be accessed for more teachers in New Jersey. But definitely the MISE program was truly a one-of-a-kind program, and didn't just, what was one of the things that was very special about it is it didn't just target teachers. It also brought administrators. There was an Academy for Leadership in Science, and teams would be sent from districts or would attend the Summer Institute from districts and would have administrators on their team as well. So it would be teachers learning alongside administrators. So administrators would see, building principals or superintendents would see what science should or could look like in elementary and high school classrooms, and a common vision could be developed and then also maintained with meetings throughout the year. And so it really was a one-of-a-kind thing, but the people who were doing that work are still doing that work just in different capacities, and so they're definitely experts who could be contacted to see how that work could maybe be replicated or continued for more teachers in New Jersey.
I am going to give a shout out to a program that is happening for science teachers this summer. Shirley, I don't know if you can upload one more slide, and so people can see this related to what Siobhan's talking about. And it's somebody you worked with quite a bit, Siobhan. Shirley, can you go with one more slide?
One more?
It was out of it. Let's see if it uploaded. Close out of the presentation and then log back into it. There's one. Yep, slide. Yep, and then just present again.
Okay.
Raritan Valley Community College offers teacher professional development for the next generation science standards, which, as we all know, the NJSLS were completely adopting the NGSS as their standards. And I know for me, Dr. Will Vanderveen is one of the best professional development speakers I've had. Siobhan, you can speak to him and Stacy Vanderveen based on your work at Merck. But they rarely come to this area, and the work that they do tends to spread out over 3 to 5 days of workshop training, which a lot of districts just can't afford that amount of time to do professional development, this kind of high level professional development. This summer, Delran High School is going to be hosting Will and his wife Stacy from August 3rd to the 7th. There is a registration due date of May 30th. For more information, and Shirley, we will send this out right with links to everyone on the webinar. You can go to that link for more information, but then to register, it's just a Google form, and then they will email you back. But I think it's very good PD. It really gives you the idea of how three-dimensional learning, which is what these three wonderful educators do on a daily basis. It really does address concerns, and it is a K through 12 institute that will be happening. But if you're up in North Jersey, the workshop there, let me give you the dates. It's a lot closer for you. Monday, July 20th to Friday, July 24th. The cost of the institute in North Jersey is $300, and in South Jersey it's $350. But the reason for the increase in price is that they have to bring all their teacher trainers and stay overnight, because it is about a 2-hour difference up to Raritan Valley from our area in South Jersey. So that's just one little point I wanted to make, Siobhan, based on what you were just saying with Merck. Merck doesn't exist anymore as far as their MISE training, but this is something that is one of those PD sessions that you were referring to that has been an offshoot of MISE.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Charlie?
Yes. So Christine Gertain says, I teach in a flipped classroom where the students are doing original research, so it is a true inquiry experience. I am worried that there would not be something traditional for me to video record. What are the panel's thoughts on this? I meet one-on-one with my students most of the week and then as a group once a week. In the group meeting, students are peer editing PPTs, posters, or papers, or giving oral feedback on presentations, both poster or PowerPoint.
I would say that sounds like a perfect video lesson. I mean, my students, during the video, I'm assuming this is for submission for the award, and the video lesson that I submitted was not me standing and quote unquote teaching my students periodic trends. I gave them data on sheets and they picked it apart using an I-square analysis, and they discussed in groups what they thought would be. They created posters, they did peer feedback with one another. Occasionally I interjected a question with different groups. I sat with each group, listened in, offered comments, they talked with each other. I think the big thing about and it was fine, and I think it was actually good because it showed what I do day to day with my students. I think the big thing was making sure that there was audio at each of the groups, and so the way I worked around that, I talked with my video tech teacher in my building, and he suggested that each group just have an iPhone at each of their tables, and all the kids had iPhones, so we just did one at each table, and so that way each conversation was recorded, and then we enlisted the help of some of the video tech students, and they dubbed in the conversations depending on which group the camera was focused in on at any given time. So that way the audio would be synced with the video, and that worked out really well because it was snapshots into each of the different groups' conversations and then my interactions with the groups.
Okay.
Yeah, also the videotape portion of the award currently, I believe, is not simply, but 30 minutes of videotape. So they're not even looking on the videotape portion to see an entire lesson from beginning to end. The biggest part is the reflection about student learning, and that you can describe where that particular part that you sent in lies within a trajectory of student learning. So I think even a research project like that would allow you to answer the questions that are part of the awards process.
Great. Shirley, do we have any more questions?
We have one more question. Does anyone know of a district or group of districts that host a job or career fair?
I know that, the colleges and, our superintendent goes frequently to the job fairs, to these fairs to try to get that best candidates, especially when we have positions like these. And sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not. And quite frankly, the discrepancy in pay between South Jersey and North Jersey sometimes is that factor where we lose out on the best candidates. And, that's just the reality of the situation in a state that is so densely populated and there's a lot of pull for resource. So, those fairs are going on, but not necessarily. Are you talking about at the K through 12 level? Is that what the question is referring to?
He didn't specify.
I do
James.
know that in past years, the Association of Math Teachers of New Jersey has had a job fair, usually up in North Jersey, somewhere abouts. I'm looking at their website now. I don't see one registered for this year, but that might be something to check out. People come from lots of different school districts to that event in the past. I have been at that myself.
Great. So if if that is it, we are just about 6 minutes over on our webinar today, and I apologize for, for all of you who've stayed on a little bit longer with us. We totally appreciate the time and the input of Michael, Siobhan, and Ralph, and the preparation you gave us for ensuring today's success on this webinar. And we hope that some of you who are listening today may take on the same challenge that they did in being recognized as incredible educators. New Jersey's ranked #1 in this nation for its education program, and that's because of people like you and working alongside Siobhan on a daily basis and getting to know Michael and Ralph. I know that our connections are going to be stronger and make our programming even better through the conversations like we're having today, even though sometimes they're tough and things don't always work out the way we want. Let's just keep driving forward and doing the best for our students, because that's what we do well here in Jersey. So thank you, everybody, and we hope you enjoyed our session. Please, once Shirley sends out the recording for today, if you have any additional questions for us or for our presenters, please don't hesitate to ask, and we will forward those on to them. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.